Hi, I'm Michael Gross, host of the B&O Railroad Museum Television Network. The B&O served the Union cause during the entire American Civil War. By the end, the B&O Railroad had earned the sobriquet, Mr. Lincoln's Railroad. For the world, the B&O demonstrated the first strategic use of railroads in military operations. One sobering duty was left to the B&O when tragedy struck the nation.
After 4 long years, an end to the Civil War was in sight when a Southern sympathizing actor named John Wilkes Booth assassinated President Abraham Lincoln in Ford's Theater in Washington on the evening of April 14, 1865. The entire nation reeled in shock. As the greatest manhunt in American history took place, arrangements were being made to return the body of the fallen president to his hometown of Springfield, Illinois, by train for his burial. Ironically, in February of 1861, Lincoln had traveled by train from Springfield to Washington for his inauguration in a circuitous route through 7 states in order to introduce himself to the American people. His funeral train would take a similar route in reverse, back to his home, so that the American people could say goodbye to their martyred president. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton took charge of organizing the funeral train. Immediately, he called on his close friend and colleague, John Work Garrett, the president of the B&O Railroad, and appointed him to chair the planning committee that would finalize every detail of the mournful journey. After lying in state under the dome of the Capitol in Washington for 3 days, Lincoln's body was taken to the nearby B&O Railroad station on New Jersey Avenue, where newly sworn-in President Andrew Johnson and the thousands of people gathered there bid the late president a final farewell. Waiting at the station was Lincoln's funeral train. It consisted of a locomotive and tender, 7 passenger cars, and the elegant car that would carry his remains. The funeral car was built by the United States Military Railroad as a private car for the president, who planned to use it to tour the country once the war was over. Now it would carry the coffins of both Lincoln and his son Willie, who had died while he was in office and was to be reinterred in Springfield next to his father. Mounted on the front of the locomotive were 2 U.S. flags and a framed portrait of the president. Black bunting was draped from the locomotive and the funeral car. Preceding the train was a pilot engine and a single passenger car containing a detachment of soldiers and railroad employees. Their mission was to ensure that the tracks were clear all the way to their first stop in Baltimore City. On board the funeral train were approximately 150 official mourners, including B&O President John Work Garrett, who had become a close friend of President Lincoln during the war. The train pulled into Baltimore's Camden Station just before 10 a.m. on April 21st. Lincoln's final visit to Baltimore would only last about 5 hours. The station and yard were draped in mourning befitting the occasion, as was nearly the entire city. A special detachment of 4 officers and 25 sergeants were assigned to act as pallbearers and an honor guard. These men were from the Veteran Reserve Corps, a unit composed of men who had been on active duty and through illness or wounds were no longer fit for field service. The Veteran Reserve Guard escort accompanied Lincoln's coffin at all times and were the only ones allowed to carry it on and off of the train at the designated points for public viewing. The coffin was ceremoniously removed from the funeral car and placed in a rosewood hearse pulled by 4 horses with black plumes mounted on their heads. Moving to the measured beat of the Death March, the funeral procession passed along the city streets lined with thousands of people who came to pay their respects despite a morning of pouring rain. Lincoln's body was ushered into the rotunda of the Merchants Exchange building in Baltimore, and the president's coffin was opened for a single hour. An estimated 10,000 people filed past the coffin to view Lincoln's lifeless body. At 2 p.m., the casket was closed and returned to the hearse, which took it to the Calvert station of the Northern Central Railroad, where the funeral car had been transferred. A Northern Central Railroad locomotive with 7 replacement cars then took the funeral train to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where the sad drama would be repeated. From Harrisburg, the funeral train would make stops in Philadelphia, New York City, Albany, Buffalo, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Chicago before arriving in Springfield, Illinois on May 3rd, a distance of 1,600 miles traveled over 25 different railroads.
I'm Michael Gross. Thanks for watching the B&O Railroad Museum Television Network.
Interested in learning more about the B&O Railroad Museum and Ellicott City Station? Follow us on Facebook and Twitter with daily updates on upcoming events, coupons, photographs, history, and things to do in Baltimore. You'll never be off track.